So in this segment, I wanted to kind of discuss the fallout from the Winter Fuel Allowance vote, how stupid it was for Labour, and also just my general thoughts on, I just don't get how his comms team, the Labour Party's comms team, are just so bad that they didn't see this one coming a mile away. Genuinely just a pointless move. So this from Shoaib Khan of ITV saying multiple Labour MPs who abstained on the winter fuel payment vote tell me they were told they would lose their whip if they voted against it. They said I wanted to vote against, but I would struggle to do my job if I did. Abstaining was the best I could do. I'm so angry, one MP tells me, and this is where you could argue for altruistic reasons and argue and say, look, this is a vote they were never going to win, and so causing a rebellion now wouldn't really help them that much. Plus the fact that at least then now they're more able to do constituency work and lobby for their constituents who ultimately they represent. You can make that argument. You could also make the argument that most likely their constituents have just lost out on their winter fuel allowance, and their lives are going to be ultimately harder for it, and that some of them might die. And I'm more privy to that second argument that they didn't put their constituents first in terms of being able to work better now with it being within the party, but they did it for themselves, really. They did it because they don't want to be on the wrong side of the leadership. Starmer's leadership, which he's very petty and vindictive. If you look at the way he treated Emily Thornberry, for example. So this video tweeted out by No Justice, the gentleman here, talking about how we should back things like the winter fuel allowance because universality of benefits is important, but moreover, it's important to build kind of coalitions and solidarity with people because fair enough, the older people generally did vote Conservative, and the Conservatives kicked mostly middle-aged and younger people, and this is our chance to kick them back, the older people. But, we shouldn't do that because, being on the left is about being in solidarity and trying to help people, even when, they might vote against their best interests. A Tory MP asking this.
If the Prime Minister was a pensioner earning $11,350 this year and receiving no winter fuel payment, what would he prioritise this Christmas?
Now, I believe they're entitled to the pension credit, but they might be receiving the pension credit already. So, taking their winter fuel allowance, it will be a massive detriment to them if they're already on pension credit.
Heating or eating?
This is very ironic because this is the Conservative Party who put many people in this position even until this year, and so now they want to morally grandstand, but this is what Labour have given them, the moral high ground.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we have to be clear why this decision is being made. A £22 billion black hole.
And again, that £22 billion figure is quite disingenuous. The IFS called out, the fact that there was a fiscal black hole, anyways, and Labour did do the pay increases, which obviously I back. But the idea that it's 22 billion is a lie, and Labour increased that figure anyways.
And the previous government would walk past these tough decisions, pretend it wasn't there, put it in the long grass. We're not prepared to do that. Because we're taking tough decisions, we can commit to the triple lock, and that means that the state pension will increase by more than any loss of the winter payment allowance. But I would just say...
But they're meant to receive the winter fuel payment allowance in tandem with the pension increase.
This. The biggest impact on pensioners in recent years was when they lost control of inflation.
Liz Truss really was the greatest gift to the Labour Party, to be honest, because ultimately people will die as a result of what Labour are doing here. And we go back to this clip from James Schneider.
Have been falling, and not really just for this parliament. We have now almost 2 decades of falling living standards for large sections of the population, and the macro is really bad. Geopolitical crises and stress.
This clip from March, this is before the economy just flatlined again.
Climate breakdown, rising costs, deglobalisation. The outlook is not good, and Labour's current plan, which is to say we'll grow the economy, how, not a word, is a recipe for Keir Starmer being the most hated man in Britain by the end of the Parliament. So I don't think it will be the left that removes him. I think that unless Labour develop some actual policies to deal with the many crises that we face that are bold and big, then the government will have a big mandate, will do nothing, and will be seen as a failure.
And, so far his polling numbers are in the bin. You got Rachel Reeves claiming £3,700 in energy support before axing the winter fuel payment. Why the media haven't made a bigger story out of this, God only knows that one. This is, if I was in the media now, this is what I'd be running with in every interview, and really making the point that, how can Labour afford not to help people heat their houses? If they wanted to means test it, why not set the means test at 50k, 60k, somewhere higher up? I just don't get it. Beth Rigby saying that she thinks it's going to be a bumpy autumn for Starmer and it's going to be really unpopular with his base. I think he's very unpopular in the country in general, to be honest with you. 9 out of 10 pensioners will lose their winter fuel allowance after a vote in the Commons today. More than 50 MPs abstained. That is a lot who are deeply uneasy about this policy, which again, this is, he's barely a couple months into the role and he's already had this massive unforced error. This huge majority, it doesn't work if you're going against, large swathes of the party. You got this from Francis Ryan saying, sorry, vote aside. No one needs a conscience lesson from the party that brought us disability benefit cuts, the rape clause, food banks, Rwanda flights, PPE contracts, talking about the Conservative Party. Because at the Conservative Party are trying to take the moral high ground here, despite the fact that they caused all of these problems, despite the fact that they've led to councils being bankrupt. This is the Conservatives deserve no moral high ground here, but the Labour Party have gifted it to them. This from the BBC.
Can't tell you how many messages we get every morning from people who are really concerned, including this one just in the last few minutes from Susan, who says, I'm already struggling. I go out without food on a regular basis just to pay my bills and keep my head above water. If this payment is taken away, I won't be able to afford to put on my heating at all. It's no good saying you'll get an extra £400 in spring with the pension. It is this winter. It is now that we need this.
Winter only starts in next year, guys. There's no December's not a winter month. November's not a cold month either.
Money. What do you say to Susan and many people like her?
Well, first of all, let me reassure Susan to say, obviously, this winter, the state pension is £900 higher, and energy bills, in terms of the energy price cap, is £100 lower, and we can...
Again, we've already discussed how, pension increases are based around, CPI inflation. CPI inflation is a complete joke of a metric. That's something we've discussed previously. And so the idea that, ultimately that the pension increase will cover the rise in energy bills, but I guess old people only have to worry about energy bills, right? Because even though you have pensioners who are in the rent, in the rental market, who don't own their properties, they rent it. You have pensioners who are still probably paying off mortgages. Like, how have you not factored that into your analysis? Of course you haven't, because you're disingenuous.
Almost people like Susan, as well as being committed to the triple lock, so pensioners will be better off next year, the year after that, and throughout this Parliament. There is targeted support at people who need it the most in terms of making sure people who are on pension credit, first of all, receive pension credit. The drive-up of that has been remarkable in the last 5 weeks. Obviously,
again, do the DWP, who I think are administering this, do they have the staff to deal with all the extra applications, especially when the increase in uptake in people taking pension credit will wipe out any savings from the winter fuel allowance? I guess you can argue it's the people who need the money more will get it. You can try and make that argument, but there are massive delays on people getting winter fuel allowance. Getting the pension credit. Ultimately, the cost of moving civil servants into the DWE to deal with all these applications as well would be incredible. That would cost a lot of money. They did not plan this out at all. They should have done this next year, really. I get trying to get all the bad stuff out of the way first, but this was a very, very big unforced error.
That then means you're still eligible for winter fuel payments. On top of that, you've got the Household Support Fund, which is discretionary targeted support in local areas. You also have things like Warm Homes Discount. But again,
are these all? How old are people supposed to gain access to this? When the pension credit, the document they have to fill out, apparently it's around 200 plus questions. These are older people who are, let's be honest, are technologically challenged. Who's meant to help them? What support is in it for them? Can they go to the community centre to get help? What are you offering really to help the most vulnerable people in society here, apart from taking away vital funds that they need?
I will acknowledge openly the kind of decision that this represents comes again from a place you wouldn't want to be. That the black hole in the public finances is real. It concerns things that are very, very dear to the public in terms of promises that have been made.
Well, that's all right then. There's a massive black hole in the budget. Sorry, Grandma, you can't heat your house because the economy's in a bad state. Sorry, you might die. Sorry, you might need to go to the hospital, which ultimately has a cost. The economy's in a bad way. You'd forget we're a so-called developed country. You know, our economy is meant to be one of the richest in the world. You would forget this if you listen to this lot.
In my department, that's money for the steel industry, it's compensation for postmasters, and we want to honour those promises, and that means being frank with the public about what we have inherited.
Sorry, Grandma, we have to deal with the steel industry and give more subsidies to Tata Steel. I mean, who's buying this, honestly? You know, I get sick of certain goons as well, talking about how, you know, why should millionaire pensioners deserve to get winter fuel allowance? Cool, set it at $1 million and say any pensioner who has assets over $1 million doesn't get the winter fuel allowance. Like, the means testing in this was a complete joke.
Look at what happened to the defence equipment plan. Under the Conservative government in 2010, there was a desire to balance the books. In doing so, the Ministry of Defence deferred spending. It moved it to the right, which left us with aircraft carriers without aircraft and a raft of other problems. So deferring decisions and spending does not solve things. And this...
You could have left this to next year. Like, what she's talking about, like, the army didn't want to take tough decisions and it's caused massive problems. Cool, that's fine. But, you know, if these people do not get these payments, they could die. Like, there won't be a next year. You can't fix up a dead person. They're dead. You know, this from Carol Vorderman saying that she told me Keir Starmer should apologise over cutting fuel payments, and he duped the electorate because it wasn't in the manifesto, even though, you know, we kept telling people they're going to do dumb stuff. I don't think they'd be this dumb to cut this specific benefit, but we told them there's going to be more austerity. We told them that there's going to be potential benefit cuts. They never believed us. They just kept saying, vote Labour, get the Tories out, who cares? You know, we'll pressure Labour from the left. It's like, cool, I don't see the Labour social goons do it. I don't see Supertansky do it. You know, I don't see Phil and Graham really doing it. You know, they're the social goons. I don't see Bowler Hatman doing it. You know, all of those people who kept saying, we're going to pressure Labour from the left. Where you at? I don't see you. If anything, all you're doing is giving the Labour Party cover to your audience. Tragic. This about, you know, the austerity, you know, about George Osborne really and Rachel Reeves.
Stephen Flynn, who is the SNP's Westminster leader here. Now, your party was against this idea of means testing the winter fuel allowance. What about that argument from the government that there's not enough money to go around, so those who need it most should be the ones targeted with that money?
So, of course, I've just came from the House of Commons chamber where the Labour Party have proactively voted to take away the winter fuel payment from people with an income of £12,000, £13,000, £14,000 per year. They're not wealthy, they're not rich, and yet they're having vital financial support removed from them at a time when energy bills are increasing, when the cost of living crisis is still, of course, biting. This is in stark contrast to the change message which the Labour Party delivered in advance of the election, and now in Scotland.
Change for them older people because they ain't going to get their winter fuel allowance now. That's something the Tories would very much have struggled to get rid of. I think Theresa May tried it years ago, and it was a very toxic issue. So, you know, it is change for the pensioner generation.
We were promised by the leader of the Scottish Labour Party, Anna Sarwar, that there would be no austerity, that there would be no cuts. Well, what we've seen here today is an abdication of that promise that the Labour Party made to the electorate in Scotland, and it's happening just a few weeks after the election itself.
But others would argue that actually if you look at the total amount of money being given to pensioners, there has been a significant rise in the state pension. They have the triple lock, which does protect pensioners up to a point. That's risen this year, it will rise next year as well. So if you look at the overall amount, actually that doesn't amount to austerity.
So what the Labour Party are positing is that you can give people money with one hand and take with another, and that's not a problem. Well, of course,
I mean, if you're going to make the argument about pensions as well, are you going to argue that we didn't have austerity under David Cameron then because pensions went up as well? There was the triple lock. Like, genuinely, some of these arguments are brain... I'm not saying the journalist is brain dead for giving these arguments, because these are the points people are making, but these arguments themselves are completely stupid.
It's a problem for each and every person who's contacted me and so many other MPs who now can't afford to pay their energy bills this winter because they're not wealthy. As I said, they're only earning £13,000, £14,000, £15,000 per year. And in Scotland, of course, it's a little bit colder, it's a little bit darker, so those bills are a little bit higher, so every little helps, and the Labour Party have proactively chosen to take money away from those individuals. Now, I was listening very closely to the arguments of the Secretary of State, and she said it was crocodile tears. It was full outrage. Well, this isn't full outrage. This is anger, palpable anger from the public at the fact that the Labour Party are choosing to follow Tory fiscal rules and balancing the books on the backs of some of the poorest in society. George Osborne did it before. Rachel Reeves is repeating the trick.
And I think, you know, the SNP really need this guy in charge of the party. He's very good. Very, very good. This from Peston saying, here's what Rachel Reeves just told Labour MPs is the prize of sticking with her controversial decision to end universal pension entitlement to the winter fuel payments. She said, if we show, as I believe we will, that economic stability is the hallmark of Labour governments, there is no limit to what we can achieve, because with that stability comes investment, with investment comes growth, with growth comes prosperity, end quote. As I said earlier, she's now betting the whole farm, as it were, on the symbolism of making hugely unpopular cuts to older people's incomes, and I just don't get who they're doing this for. You know, the Labour Party talked about how the city would have, the City of London would have lost faith or whatever in UK bonds. Like Robert Peston did another clip where he kind of destroyed that one, where he spoke to people, I think, in the city, and they said that's complete garbage. You know, you had the government whip, the Labour Party's whip, issuing strong warnings of consequences against voting against the government or withdrawing on the winter fuel allowance. So essentially, I think there was a compromise there and said people can abstain. But again, if your MP is one of the ones that abstained, that they put themselves above you. That's what they did with this, especially if you're a pensioner or, you know, your parents, you know, rely on the winter fuel allowance. You know, and the argument here, like from Kezia Dugdale, is just embarrassing, saying a huge chunk of those 10 million people have had a very good decade when it comes to increasing in pensions. Like, the UK's pension is one of the lowest, I think, in Europe. Like, yeah, you know, they've had, you know, pension increases, but if you go from 2 to 3, yeah, that's an increase. You can say it's a big increase, but it's not a lot. Not really. I just don't see it. I'm not seeing this at all. And, you know, Starmer's saying we're going to be unpopular.
I'm absolutely convinced that we will only deliver that change. I'm absolutely determined we will, if we do the difficult things now. I know they're unpopular. I know they're difficult. Of course they're tough choices. And
these men really learned the wrong lessons from George Osborne. They're going for we're going to do all this austerity now, and whatever savings we have or whatever we can do here, what we're going to do is, in about 2 years' time, we're going to pump money back into the economy and say, look, green shoots, guys, look at this recovery. Now, this is what Phil accused the Conservative Party of. This is what the Labour Party are going to do. Mark my words. They're going to increase spending, you know, in years 3, 4 and 5 and say, look, it's because we've grown the economy, even though none of these policies will actually grow the economy. Not really. It's just crazy to me. And this one here, this clip here is just awful.
Of course, we've had this vote about the winter fuel payment entitlement. I know you voted in favour along with the government. How tough a decision was that?
Absolutely horrendous. Anybody that knows me knows that I did not come into politics to have to make a decision like that. I know what it's like to live in fuel poverty. You know, our meter went off when I was little. I absolutely get it. Ultimately, we have been left in such a horrendous economic situation that we didn't know that 22 billion.
So imagine you're this kid, right? And, you know, you had this support, and now the government are taking it away, and you find out it's because of this £22 billion black hole. Do you think as a kid you'd give a shit about, you know, this black hole? You'd be like, I'm cold. Why is it cold for? Like, why are we struggling? You know, do you think there's older people and be like, you know, I'm freezing here. You know, I might need to go to the hospital, or I might catch an illness. But it's okay, guys, because that money's going to reduce the £22 billion hole in the budget. They don't care.
£1 billion black hole. We've got to make really tough decisions quickly so that we can make sure that all the support is targeted at the people that need it the most. We've made sure that we've got the household support fund extended, for example. We're keeping the triple lock, so that's £900 this year, over £400 next. We want to make sure that our pensioners that need it are absolutely looked after. But this is a Tory mess, and I'm really angry that they've done that.
I will take that to Ben, but just to say...
I'm angry that the Tories have put us in this position where we have to cut funding from old people, even though they didn't have to do this. You know, there's goddamn Tories.
You know, it is a political choice that you're making, and you could have abstained or voted against it if you weren't in favour of that decision.
I was elected as part of a Labour government, and people told that Labour government that what they wanted is economic security. If we hadn't done anything, then we risked having Liz Truss marked.
That's complete garbage. Again, that's been debunked time after time. There was no indication the city would do that. The reason the Liz Truss thing happened, because it was around, I think, £50 billion worth of tax cuts that were going to do no growth for the economy. They blocked the OBR budget. Like I said, Liz Truss is the greatest gift to the Labour Party because they can push this economic nonsense and the media barely push back on it.
And all of us suffering again, making really tough decisions now so that we can all be better off in the longer term.
I bet you the kid who grew up and had their electric meter go off would be ashamed of you, pal. I bet you they would be. I bet you. But anyways, before I get even more mad, let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, support the channel on Patreon if you can, and yeah, hopefully if you are impacted by this, please put it in the comments below, and yeah, make sure you write to your MP if they abstained or voted to get rid of the winter fuel allowance, and I'll catch you in the next one.